Good evening, Year 11, and welcome to the Night Before News Business Studies PPE Revision Guide. As you know, we are completing Component 3, and we've only started Component 3 in January. However, this exam tomorrow will also have certain amount of content from Component 2. The revision topic list is on the screen, and which is what the topics that will come up in the exam tomorrow. This has also been on Arbor since before half term. So for the exam tomorrow, you will be given a set of written questions that are answers based on different skills, but on the knowledge of the Learning Aim A that we have started since January, plus the information, some of the information from Component 2. You'll be asked a level 1 question, which is a question which will be based on knowledge. So I will be testing how much do you know to see if there are any gaps in your knowledge. So questions like this will start with what is, or state one advantage of, state one disadvantage of. What is the difference between? So there'll be a very knowledge-based questions which you will be expected to know. There will also be level 2 pass questions, which the level 2 pass questions are very similar to the questions based on level 1, but they will be based on a context. And you know that the context means a given scenario, so therefore you have to apply your knowledge that you have. They'll start with things like, what advertising is Company X doing? What are the advantages of Company X of possibly using break-even? We then move on to the level 2 merit questions, which are analysis questions. Again, this would be analysis in context. So you'll be given the business, you'll be expected to know the advantages and disadvantages, but you need to pick out the ones that are most appropriate to that particular business. So we'll start with things like evaluate which of the methods is better for Company X. The level 2 distinctions, which at the moment will not appear in the exam tomorrow, that will be further down the line in class assessments, but you will also be asked to make a recommendation. So the question would look like, recommend and justify which method of advertising Company X should go with. So let's take a look at some of the questions that could possibly come up and the skills that are needed. So for a level 1 knowledge question, which you can see in front of you, it's all about knowing the knowledge, as I've said previously. You've got a little bit of a context there, and therefore your answer for this question doesn't need to be about the context, but it's just giving you a little bit of background information. The question, in order to understand the question, you need to think about the command word. Now in this case, the command word is state, which means no explanation is needed. You just give one sentence answers and no more. You can write more if you want, but you're not going to score any more marks than are needed. The question asks you for 2, which means with 2 marks for the question, it's 1 mark for each aspect. Now you'll see the table there. It says the basic aspect of advertising. What does it mean? What does the message mean? What does the medium mean? Now the medium means what the communication needs to say. That's from the exam board and the mark scheme. As you can see, it's a 1 sentence answer. And therefore it's similar for the medium. How to get the message across. 1 simple sentence that will give the 2 marks. So let's take it up a notch, a level, and look at the level 2 knowledge question. Again, there is no context here. It's just about knowing the theory, but because the question asks you to explain, you now need to put in a connective into your sentence. The question asks for 2 advantages, but it also carries 4 marks. So if we break the question down, along with the marks, 2 advantages and 4 marks means 2 marks for each advantage. Now, to get the 2 marks, you would need 1 point, which is the theoretical point of the advantages of advertising, and then you throw in a connective with the final sentence in order to get the 2 marks. So this is what it looks like. The mark scheme says that you award 1 mark for an advantage and then 1 mark for a linked justification. The important thing is here is a linked justification. So you need to say the reason why you've given that point. Here are some model answers. I'm going to look at the second bullet point. Advertising attracts new customers or increases traffic, or consumers are more likely to visit an enterprise after viewing an advertisement. So any one of them would get you 1 mark. There's your connective where it says which can result in more sales or increased revenue for the enterprise. So by linking in the advantage to what happens because of the advantage, you will get the 2 marks. So the final type of question that I'd like to show you is one that's a level 2 merit and distinction. Now for this, you need to have the knowledge in context, you need to be able to analyse, and you need to recommend a strategy, but within the context of the strategy. So this is a previous question in the past paper. I'll give you just a minute to have a quick read of that. Pause the video if you want more time. So, given that question, it's a 6-mark question. Now, to approach this question, you need to go through these 4 steps. So, evaluate which 2 means looking at the advantages and disadvantages of print and digital. The 4 marks for the advantages and disadvantages plus 2 marks for the justified recommendations. That will make up the 6 marks. So therefore you need 2 marks for print that you will need to make a point and use a connective as a however to do the opposite. The same then applies to the digital. And then finally, with your recommendation, you need to justify why you have chosen that method by taking into consideration. Now, underneath, they are the theory. Budget, time, expertise, audience and message are the theory to each of those advantages and disadvantages of print and digital. That's what you would need to talk about. Now, don't worry. I know we haven't quite covered all of my advertising yet, and it's not going to appear in the exam tomorrow, but it is the approach to a 6-mark question that you need to know. So it shows us here the mark scheme. Now the mark scheme goes through the advantages and disadvantages of print and digital as a medium of advertising. Now again, we will cover this in class and it won't come up in tomorrow's exam. However, what will come up is the approach of how to answer an evaluative question. So you need to know the advantages and disadvantages of each of the methods that you're looking at. That's the revision that you will need to complete and make sure you know. And then the content at the bottom there is what you should be including. All evaluative questions in the mark scheme look like this. So I'm just going to show you a model answer for this question. So this would be a model answer to the question that we've looked at before in the approach. And there are several things that I want to point out to you so you know for tomorrow's exam. First thing is we're looking at the context of the business. Now the context of the business tells us that there's only £500. So that makes it a very important consideration to which one you pick. But before you pick, you need to look into which one is better, print or digital. So there's your first connective, the good thing. So we're talking about it making advantage about print advertising, and there's the advantage, which is in context, it's relatively cheap. So with only £500, it's a good thing that print is cheap. However, is another connective. This is where the second mark comes in for the advantages of and disadvantages of print. This type of advertising may prove to be too expensive, as if he did flyers, he would have to pay for them to be designed, printed and delivered. This would also take a lot of time. So again, it's contextualized. It's a disadvantage because it could cost him more than he thinks. Therefore, it's a contextualized argument. Now comes another connective, on the other hand, meaning we now know that we're moving over to the advertising digitally. So, on the other hand, advertising digitally over the internet would be an advantage, as lots of people use the internet. A major advantage of that. And we've got a connective which will give you the linked justification, which gives him a wider target audience. So there's your linked justification. If I use the internet, a lot of people will see it, therefore I've got a wider target audience. Another connective but, which means the second mark for the digital advertising digitally is now coming. He may not be targeting the right people, as he hasn't got control over who sees the adverts online. So therefore, again contextualised, he doesn't have any control, major disadvantage, he may be wasting the money because not the right people are seeing it. That's a major disadvantage of advertising digitally. So that's 4 marks there. And to get the final 2 marks, you need a recommendation. So what would you do? I would recommend that Damien uses digital advertising. So I've answered the question straight away. I've now used a connective because I'm now going to justify why I'm saying digital advertising. It's very cheap and he's only a micro business and doesn't have much spare money. So the less he spends, the more he has left in his business. So that's kind of the justification behind it. The paragraph then goes on to talk about why digital is the best option, and that's where you get the full marks. So there you have it, Year 11. A full guide in how to answer the questions for tomorrow's PPE exam. I have left the revision topic list up. I hope your revision goes well, and good luck for tomorrow.